It's fascinating how time gives you fresh eyes. When I sat down with Maya Horgan Famodu in 2017, what struck me then was her clarity about connecting Silicon Valley capital with African startup innovation. But when I listen back now, I hear something else. It's a quiet confidence of someone who had already learned to chart her own course. Now, back then, Maya wasn't sharing nearly as much about growing up in a Minnesota trailer park or living alone in someone's basement at 14. She certainly wasn't yet known for candid founder and VC insights that she shares today, along with personal reflections. The kind of thing that makes her one of Africa's more interesting people to follow on LinkedIn within the tech VC space. Now, instead, this conversation I had with her back then captures Maya at an earlier crossroads, fresh from investment banking, building Ingressive, and already seeing dominoes that others hadn't noticed start to line up. Now, what's remarkable isn't just how many of those dominoes would eventually fall, but also how her independent spirit was already quietly reshaping the relationship between Silicon Valley money and African tech. Now, I'm Andile Masuku, and this is the African Tech Roundup podcast. As promised, this is one of a handful of throwback podcast episodes we're sharing over the festive season to hold you down until we start publishing fresh material in the coming weeks. And with that, let's roll the tape on this throwback podcast with Maya Horgan Famodu, founder and partner at Ingressive Capital.
This is African Tech Conversations.
Is that an actual song, or are you making one up on the fly?
I'm absolutely making this up on the fly. I'm sure it's something that I hummed while walking through the forests around in my small town in Minnesota. No, actually, there's a Brandon White, I believe his name is, called Home. It's spoken word music, and I would say that best sums up my childhood. It's about the frozen winters and bright green summers of life in the Midwest.
Wow. Would that be an accurate portrayal of what life was like for you growing up?
As far as the geography, yes.
Okay, so I've got a scenic picture of the background, paint and everything else, if you don't mind.
Okay. So I'm half Nigerian and half Swedish, so I'd say that certainly influenced my childhood. My dad and all of his brothers moved to the U.S. for higher education from Nigeria. They all married and settled down with Swedish women from rural Minnesota, and that our tribe of Nigerians in Minnesota was how my childhood was structured. I'd say that is the other underlying component.
And what percentage of you would you consider Nigerian? Which percentage would you say is Swedish?
Interesting. I would say, physically 50-50. I would say in personality, I'm a little bit more on the, Nigerian side, especially in business.
And so, you sound American. So where does that feature in the way you identify?
Nigerian and Swedish American.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And as far as the way that I grew up, so interesting story. My family stayed in the U.S. until about high school and then returned back to Nigeria. And my younger 3 siblings are growing up there. And so it's been an interesting dichotomy, an interesting contrast to grow up with a culture with a group of people who have come from the continent and then be able to return and straddle two completely different worlds. So I do relate more with the American side than the Swedish side, but I would say, now I spend half my year on the continent and my family has returned. So certainly the Nigerian side is quite prevalent.
And which aspects of that would you say feel most of your siblings and the way they're being brought up? Which aspect of that would you say feels most foreign to you?
So my siblings are, I would say, visiting my sister's campus. I would say that the concept, so I graduated. I went to undergrad at Pomona and then did the Cornell pre-law program. I would say the idea that's most foreign. I mean, in the way that we interact, nothing has changed. I go home and it's like we haven't been apart a day, but, going to go visit them. They both, my two younger sisters are going to Unilag, and I would say the constant, strikes, time off they have from school, the just infrastructural challenges with going to university domestically in Nigeria. I would say that is the biggest the biggest difference, the thing that is most foreign to me.
I mean, you mentioned Cornell. Is the hype around Ivy League schools well deserved, do you think?
I mean, it depends on the field that you pursue next. Are you going into law? Are you going into medicine? Are you going into entrepreneurship?
What difference would it make if, say, I said yes to that question? I said I'm going into medicine or law, for example. What difference would it make if I said that?
I mean, of course, of course, if you were pursuing the legal field, there are 30,000 lawyers that come out of law school every year, and only a certain percentage of them get jobs. And there's clearly a higher percentage that become employed from Ivy League schools. So they're just practical things like that. But if you're pursuing entrepreneurship, I think there is some merit in getting a base level of understanding of the world through education, but then, of course, getting experience on the field. So if you're pursuing entrepreneurship, if you're pursuing a high demanded field that is highly competitive and only has a few spots, I would say Ivy is more important. But if you're pursuing entrepreneurship, I would say going out and building yourself. But however you obtain that critical perspective, or that critical analysis, the ability to think innovatively with the idea and the concept of agency, however you can create that, it doesn't have to be cultivated in Ivy League. Then I think it's a bit overrated.
Look, I had a conversation with Ben White of VC for Africa the other day, and his organization recently put out research showing that many of the more successful tech startups that come from the African continent, certainly the most investable ones and the ones that succeed at attracting VC interest, seem to have founders who have one higher education, and many of them higher educations, gained at Ivy League schools. So, which begs the question, should we all be trying to get into Ivy League schools?
I don't think that it is because that they went to Ivy League schools exclusively. I think that part of it is where and the majority of venture funding that's coming into early stage VCs, or that's financing early stage startups, is coming from foreign direct investment. And people do a lot of investors, especially those from Silicon Valley, putting capital into sub-Saharan Africa, those from Europe putting capital into sub-Saharan Africa, do a lot of pattern matching when they're working with markets that they're not familiar with. And so finding people who went to Ivy Leagues is just an easy way to say, I recognize this person, here's our certain level of diligence, so because of the, so there's that one component. And the other thing, I think that's a reaction. That's an effect. It's not the fact that they went to Ivy League schools and that they can get funding. It's the fact that they came from families that allowed them to be sent abroad for higher education. And thus they had the initial capital and the initial resources in order to start their business. Does that make sense?
Yes. No, we're going to actually get to that, because I'm very curious about your tours and the very unique way, you've taken to introducing, potential VC money that could flow into the continent to potential, investment targets. That's really interesting to me, and we'll speak about that in a bit. I do want to ask a Nigerian, Swedish American, what she wants to say to America, being that this interview will go live on the 4th of July. What do you want to say to America?
Happy birthday. Good luck. I encourage you to look in the mirror and reflect.
On what?
And I would, on what? I mean, I don't really need to get into details, but there's a lot of things happening in the US, a lot of, double standards being promoted in the media, a lot of, concerning politics. And I think, each one of us needs to reassess our value system look in the mirror and see how we are either abiding by it or inadvertently disrupting it.
Are you being PC right now? Is this? Do you feel the need to be politically? Why do you feel the need to be politically correct?
When you're the front face of any sort of organization and you work with a lot of different people from a lot of different spaces, it's necessary to be considerate of how your words can impact all of those different perspective and current customers, clients, affiliates, and also because of course there are some parts of this chaos that I maybe don't understand, and I don't want to speak of spaces where I'm not an expert. And politics and the current value system of America is something that I'm very confused about.
Right. Something tells me I just heard more from the Swedish American side of you. Which is fine. And you've got good reason. So I'm just going to grab at some of the things I read about you and learned about you just getting ready for this interview. You write for the Huffington Post. You've done so for a very long time. How did you start writing for them? And did that begin pre or post the massive sort of growth they've enjoyed over the last, say, 3 or 4 years?
Yeah, post. So I started coming on 4 years. I was ghostwriting. I actually started writing for someone else and doing research for someone else. And then I met with Ariana Huffington at a conference and told her about, the column. And she's like, "Oh, I love reading about that. Maya, I think it's about time for you to have your own column. I think you need to start writing for yourself." and then from then on, she gave me a column, and I was writing about once a month. Now I need to pick that back up. But yes, I've been writing for the Huffington Post for some time now.
And I'm picking the Huffington Post out of a number of publications: the Business Day, Inc., which I'm pretty into, The Guardian, Bella Niger, This Day. Where does your urge to write and express yourself in that way come from? If you think back to maybe being a kid or whatever.
Yeah, I've actually been writing my whole life. I also have a WordPress, and you can see some of my creative writing there. But if I pursued law, so I worked at JP Morgan. Before that was, as I mentioned, the Cornell pre-law program. All throughout high school, all throughout middle school, I did a lot of writing and a lot of research in the legal space. And my interest, so now we're going to go meta, but I come from one side of humanitarians and my dad's side of, academics, and that middle ground. So they're all focused on how to better the world generally with partiality to the African continent. And so my idea of writing and of policy is that was the most effective way to promote change, especially in emerging markets, especially in sub-Saharan Africa. And then realizing it was actually by empowering the individual through entrepreneurship has my focus since shifted. But writing is a great way. Now writing is a good way. So no more on the policy and advocacy side, but now writing is such a great way to democratize access to your personal learning. So that in the same vein of how Silicon Valley, there's so much idea sharing, there's so many mentors and advocates and advisors. If you can write about your personal experience, guaranteed somebody else is going through that or will go through that and could benefit from learning from your lessons. So that's why I continue to do it.
Okay. Please go ahead and give your WordPress a plug so our listeners can find it.
I think it's just wordpress.com/Maya-Horgan.
Great. Fantastic. So what you just described, coming from a home where, one parent's in humanitarian work and the other is an educator, I imagine, would that have been the inspiration for you to study law? And then, if so, what changed once you got started with that? So you obviously took a different direction afterwards.
Yeah. So that was my initial I looking back, reflecting on my childhood, I would say that was a big motivating factor of growing up with, my mom in the military, in the National Guard, going off fighting wars, working to defend the country. My aunt, PhD in agriculture sciences, doing a lot of work in Southern Africa to kind of restructure and solve the food scarcity issues there. And my dad's side, uncle, biomedical engineering, entrepreneurs on that side. My dad, all in higher education. So growing up with these two sides, those who, commit their life to activist work and those who are more academics and entrepreneurial side, and growing up in that community. And so from a very young age, looking outward and saying, how will I contribute to the betterment of humanity? How will I fix things in the world? And law and the legal space was an immediate interest. If you can advocate for people, if you can create policies, that was my focus in that it comes from the government level, and that effective change for the individual and for the economy and the nation comes from the individual. And then the shift came after working at JP Morgan, I actually did a lot of emerging market economic research in undergrad, so led a volunteer trip to Costa Rica, did research in Trinidad, in Southern Africa and Madagascar, studying keys to sustainable economic development and Western nonprofits' influence in developing nations, and found that so when you have sustainably growing GDP, so when you have growing economies, that there's a immediate and positive correlation with higher education or higher literacy rates, lower infant mortality rates, just higher health of the people, just better lifestyles in general. And that policy and government does not as effectively and as immediately impact those. It's kind of like a repercussion. The more democratized wealth you have, the faster the growing economy, the more rights typically the individuals have. And so then my focus shifted to how do you promote the growth of economies? Well, it's all in small business generation. It's all in startup generation, particularly in emerging markets. It's all, hey, let's find a local inefficiency in our market and create a monetizable solution, or let's create a small business that can employ, people in our area, wealth generated, higher standards of living, et cetera. So my focus then shifted to how do I facilitate and how do I back these people, or how do I back people so they can build businesses, so they can grow economies, so they can have better lives? Meta, very, very
Right.
meta. But that,
Look, I can relate because in my previous life, well, it's not really, it's still part of this life, really. In my work as a broadcaster, I became a specialist at SMEs and entrepreneurship, and did a lot of work in television, writing, producing, presenting in that space, and gradually, a lot of the stories I'd be assigned, or I'd cover or chase, invariably had tech at the heart, because it's this great enabler, this great multiplier, this great facilitator, and it suddenly became a theme, and that was my entree to tech, and it sounds quite similar for you, and as far as a passion for startups really being linked to something you initially had a heart for and probably still do.
yes, yeah. Exactly.
So back to the research that VC for Africa recently put out. Some of their findings show that Africa's tech ecosystem has a high percentage of women involved in it as compared to even Silicon Valley. Does that surprise you?
No, actually, no. So as I mentioned, I spent half my year on the continent, half my year in Lagos, half my year in Silicon Valley. And it's actually rejuvenating every time that I return to Nigeria, because the chairperson of First Bank, the chairperson of GT Bank, all of these major banks, there's the chair people are women, or the high level executives are female, and I believe, I don't know the exact number, but I know it's well over half of the small businesses in sub-Saharan Africa are founded by and operating by women. So no, I mean, just from heuristics, from going and seeing, it's not a surprise. I see it all the time, and that's part of the reason why I enjoy being home, is because I see people who look like me. I see women of color, of course.
Which begs the question,
running and operating businesses.
why you'd imagine quote unquote developed economies would be way ahead of us as far as that's concerned.
Uh,
Oh, is this one of
Yeah,
those?
I get
Shall I get?
Let me think of how I would phrase
What
this.
what is the PC response? No, listen,
Yeah,
don't put
yeah.
yourself under pressure. But I mean, yeah, are there
No,
any
you would
simple
think.
answers to why we'd be beating out the rest of the world as far as that's concerned? And we're happy to, by the way.
Yeah, I think it's the matriarchal. I mean, the woman is. Yeah, I don't know how to PC answer that question. So, because Africa is the best, and the North American continent, or the North, needs to figure stuff out. Yeah, I'm not. I mean, of course, the STEM industries are adamantly promoted in Nigeria, in these economies, whereas I'm not sure if it's to the same degree in the US. So then you could say that there's just an encouragement, especially for people studying abroad, to pursue the engineering, the medical, the STEM industries. I'll
help you out and just hazard that part of the issue is maybe while they're, granted in lots of parts of Africa, there are lots of things that from a PC perspective, even someone like me might need to think twice about, say, delving into politics or delving into certain things. If I'm, in certain countries, I imagine, there are things though on the continent that are a lot easier, or we're a lot readier to talk about, the way America's taken to Trevor Noah, for example, as this novelty. Whereas in South Africa, it's like, well, we talk about that stuff all the time,
Yes.
Yeah. So I imagine you might have those issues, and perhaps we don't on this end. Just a thought. Just a thought. Now, let's talk about ingressive. You need to tell me why you'd pick a name like that and what it means. And then talk about what we started on, what we perhaps touched on at the beginning, what you alluded to, this pretty novel way you've engineered to introduce, money or VC interests, sometimes, angel investors, to potential, and ease them into our environment, our ecosystem, and introduce them to the opportunities that are there, and even in some respects, pair them with excellent investment targets. Tell me about Ingressive, the name, and what you're trying to achieve.
Sure. Okay, so first, with the name, where it came from. An ingress is an entrance point or access way. Ingressive is over relating to an ingress. So it's just the conduit, the access way, the portal to sub-Saharan African-based tech. And where it came from, where it originated, a lot of little things. I mean, I told you about, so two-part, really simply. As I mentioned, my dad moved back to the continent. So seeing him compared to all the rest of his brothers who remained in the US, building and scaling their businesses, and seeing, issues for my dad in and around the bureaucracy of owning a business, operating a business, scaling a business in Nigeria, and then also issues with the bank. If you don't know who's who, you have to make nice with this bank owner in order to get a loan. All the crazy bhala. So seeing that and the challenges and how that impacted his business relative to all of his brothers, and so there was a clearly a need. There was clearly an opportunity to bring capital and that advisory, that access, and then on the other side. Just working with people who are interested in expanding to the continent, particularly in Silicon Valley. I mean, people are looking to diversify. The bubble will pop soon. Valuations are crazy. Money is expensive. So a lot of investors here who are interested in, West and East Africa interested in South Africa tech ecosystems, but how do they enter? Where's the information? There's just a total dearth of information in and around startup opportunities or investment opportunities on the continent. So, starting to provide that bridge. And first there was a lot of consulting. So people would come, hey, I'm looking for these sorts of deals. Hey, I have a printing company in, LA and I want to expand. I want to enter the Nigerian market by doing an acquisition, just a lot of basic market research to help people get entry. And then it shifted to, when people were looking at investment opportunities, it was hard to pull the trigger. Typically for investors, they need 10 points of contact with the opportunity. One can be an article they read online. One can be a conversation by phone with the founder. One can be a referral through somebody in their network, et cetera, et cetera. But one of those touch points has to be in person. And so, with this consulting and the showcasing of deals, it was hard for people to pull the trigger when they haven't been to the continent, when they don't really understand context, when they don't really understand how effective they'll be as mentors and advisors if they don't really understand the nuances and they don't have the connections locally to support their investment opportunity. So the purpose of Tour of Tech, the reason that we launched these cross-border international tours to Lagos, to Nairobi, is one to facilitate investment. So people are meeting these people talking talking online. It's an opportunity for the investors to come to see the entrepreneurs working 3 a.m. in their back office on a Tuesday night, understanding their operation, understanding what they're building. Secondly, it provides all of the ecosystem. So we do invitation private dinners with ministry, with African leaders, with local venture partners. So say there's a problem with the startup and whoever the investor is back in their Silicon Valley office. They know who to call when there's a problem. They know how to navigate these problems from spending some time in the local markets. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. And so how do you build a model around that? How do you, and where's the pressure to provide value? Is it on the startups you're introducing to these chaps or to these individuals from abroad? Or is it for the investors to basically drop some cash before they climb on a plane and fly back? Who's most needy for the work you do to deliver a result?
Yeah. So the mission is to help grow startup ecosystems in sub-Saharan Africa or in West, East, and Southern Africa. That is the mission. But our clients, the consumers, the people that we're actually providing value to are the investors or the organizations that want access to these markets.
And so typically, what do you do? Do you get a share of the deals they're up for, or what's the model of the actual business you run?
Yes. So, interestingly, sponsors both in the US and sub-Saharan Africa, West Africa, are very excited to market to both investors or financiers looking to enter the market, and to the convening groups of tech-focused founders. So local banks who want to hold investors' escrow accounts, local later stage startups who want exclusive pitching to some of these visitors, or even foreign funds that want to market to, or don't have a presence in these local ecosystems and want to market, they sponsor. Also, people pay to come on the tour. It's for a curated week. And so that's in the short term. The longer term, we're launching a technology platform that allows us to monitor investment into and growth of Africa-based businesses. It'll function something like, you could say, a pitch book for Africa.
Right. And what would it take for you to comfortably start to dabble in investing yourself?
Actually, we are. So that's a side note. So we do syndicates right now. Hello Tractor is currently one of we're closing that up finally. We're closing up that deal right now, and two of our Tour of Tech participants are participating in this round. So yes, we are starting to do small scale investments, and there's something exciting happening end of year that will be on that note as well.
Oh, exciting. We'll be looking out for that. Now, give me a sense of the vibe at Silicon Valley. You're speaking to someone who's never been, but also many of our listeners have never been. But interestingly, though, our biggest audience outside of our biggest overseas audience for this podcast, and certainly the African Tech Roundup podcast, which I I produce also, is the US. So there's certainly an appetite for understanding what's going on the continent, but give me a sense of the vibe, being on the ground in the valley, and the level of competition for deals and deal flow and access to the right people to make the right deals. Give me a sense of that. I mean, we watched the show.
Silicon Valley.
We have to believe that it isn't quite that way.
Well, I'll give you one example of Silicon Valley relative to Silicon Sahara or of Lagos Tech.
Yes.
So we led this last tour we led a tour to Lagos in September of last year, and one of the traveling investors who came along with us actually started crying at one of the pitch competitions. And after we went aside, and I said, "What's happening? Where is this coming from?" And she said, "I didn't realize the hustle and the ingenuity. I didn't realize going to the continent, people would be not only as smart as everyone that we have here in Silicon Valley, but hustling 5 times as hard." And so, if you're a founder building a company on the continent, you have incomparable barriers to entry, hurdles, inefficiencies, challenges, just, to get, especially in Nigeria, to get from your office to the next meeting, even the transport time is just ridiculous, crazy barriers that people in Silicon Valley will never even fathom. So I want to commend people who are able to successfully build companies, especially tech companies on the continent, with Wi-Fi costs, with energy costs, with transportation, with all of these craziness. So that's one thing in comparing the two markets. As far as Silicon Valley, what it's like on the day-to-day, it's the biggest differentiator is that everyone is warm to and willing to and immediately available to provide introductions to connect you where you need to go. Of course, everyone has an idea. You go, "Oh, I'm building the Twitter for cats, the AI drone, blah 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 blah,
virtual reality,
VR, high tech, SaaS based enterprise pod,
yada yada.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, that lingo, that dialogue, I'm used to it. I don't even realize I'm numb to it these days. But so that of course, that concentration of everyone, building and creating. But there are 2 other things here that aren't as prevalent on elsewhere. And one is the innovation thinking. So everyone is constantly walking around sniffing for a problem that they have, that other people are coming to, because that's the crux of entrepreneurship. That's the crux of scalable business is, I have this problem and my friend has this problem and his friend has this problem. And there's got to be at least 10,000 people in the city alone. And maybe, 5 million, 50 million, 1 billion people in the world who share this same problem. So it's people going around with the idea that here's a local problem and I have the skills and the resources to create the solution. And there are people with lots of money sniffing around them, trying to find who has the best one. So, I mean, of course it can get crazy. Of course it's like, did you seriously just fund that person there's a lot of free flowing capital. I'll leave it at that. But it's a very inspirational, it's a very exciting place, because everyone who comes here leaves with a sense of, I can do that. I can do it because other people are doing it. And also because anyone can do it, because anyone with a good idea and passion and the drive and the dedication can create a solution that impacts a lot of other people. Yeah.
So, I mean, I recently had conversations with the head of the investment banking at Barclays, and then I also had a conversation with the MD for Sub-Saharan Africa at BT, and I put to them, a very unfair question, which is, I asked them to imagine what, if anything, they could imagine disrupting their businesses to the extent that they wouldn't exist in another 5 or 10 years. And it's interesting.
I mean, I hope that all of them are constantly, and we all remain constantly, thinking of that. I think, especially in Silicon Valley, that's the other part of it, is if you get lazy for 3 months, you're behind. For 6 months, you're potentially done.
Sure. Yeah. It could be a very sad way to die. But what's what's interesting about what the banker had to say about his, whether banking in its current form, institutional banking in its current form, might survive the next 5 or 10 years is because we're in a developing economy where the gatekeepers, where the big scale players, the big institutional players still play an unofficial gatekeeping role. Relative to the rest of the world. This is his theory that in Silicon Valley, you can have a great idea because of the proliferation of the internet. Your access to market is that much easier, and the potential for you to sort of access a market and get traction without the help of a large incumbent is all the more likely. Whereas in Africa, it isn't quite the case, in which case you sort of need to keep the large banks and the mobile telcos and the fixed line operators really close to your breast, because you probably will need to partner with them in order to make your startup a success. Do you think that kind of thinking is accurate?
The concept of affordable internet or low cost data is something that really, really intrigues me, and something we've been spending some time looking into. And it seems there's, I don't want to say an arbitrage. I don't want to say a monopoly. There are few players who handle the market, and to enter and disrupt that space, as from the model that we've been looking at, it seems particularly challenging. So,
is this on the continent or abroad?
Yeah, on the continent.
On the continent, right.
So, I mean, there are a few basic things that all startups need, and that's all tech startups need, and that's access to internet, and that's power, and those holding those spaces, it's simply because of inefficiencies in the markets that exist for any other companies, but there's also the majority control held by big players, which make it particularly challenging for disruption in those spaces. So I look forward to, I'm excited about those pursuing solutions in the power, in the telco, and as far as just telephony, so just connectivity, but also data and low cost internet. I'm looking forward to those creating solutions in those spaces.
Yeah, I mean, listening to you, I take it there is something to what he had to say, in the sense that I mean, looking locally at the mobile telcos' decision to back, or their obvious preference for backing LTE over, say, Wi-Fi, because of their ability to sort of monetize it using their legacy assets, as opposed to sort of back this unknown entity that could basically sap future revenues from them, and how difficult it is for newer players with innovative ideas in that space to sort of get the mobile telcos on board. I can see how that could be a barrier to entry, that way perhaps in the US less so.
Mm-hmm. But at the same time, so those issues exist, those challenges exist. But at the same time, when building a business on the continent, you have total greenfield, especially if you're creating solutions in and around the healthcare space, the education technology space. They're really, because they are fairly underdeveloped, you can rapidly innovate and test in these markets. Whereas if you want to create a solution and see if it's useful to the general public, there's so many hurdles that you have to go through, so much paperwork, so much even shift in policies in order to even move the needle a titch. Whereas, M Pharma just came in, all the, and Pedigree, all of these rapid innovations in the healthcare space that come from nowhere and can build really quickly.
We're taking a quick break to remind you of FreshBooks' pretty awesome offer to you, a listener of the African Tech Conversations podcast. They're offering a 30-day free trial to give you the opportunity to try out their service. Now, if you'd like to get organized, save time invoicing, and get paid faster, click through to gofreshbooks.com/tech conversations and put their software to the test. So do you have a favorite space within tech? Listening to you, it sounds like you do have some pet sectors within tech that you've identified, probably having cited some of the issues we've discussed as potential barriers or areas to sort of leave alone in favor of perhaps more fertile, more readily, tillable, ground. So would you, aside from, you've mentioned medtech, education, which other areas within tech on the continent are you bullish about?
Fintech, of course. You have only 25% of a billion people who have access to proper banking. And you have, 6 of the 10 fastest growing economies, well, as of last year, the fastest growing consumer classes, and also more than 650 million mobile users. So you have this immediate way for people to transact digitally, and a lot of opportunity to innovate, and just a lot of opportunity in general. That could be a really interesting way to disrupt the hierarchy with telcos and banking, like brick and mortar banking institutions on the continent. So I'm excited and I'm bullish about fintech, and just because of the successes thus far. You're looking at the unicorns from the continent. Look at M-Pesa, look at InterSwitch, acquisitions Fundamo and by Visa. So exciting stuff happening already in that space. Ed tech, health.
Oh yeah, so you. Sorry to interrupt you. EdTech. How excited are you for Andela?
I'm always excited about investment, about big name investment to the continent to encourage other people to get active. And then also, democratizing access. That's huge. I am adamant and firm believer in their tagline that brilliance is evenly distributed, but opportunity is not. I firmly believe in that, and their ability to test for pure intellect, pure reasoning and critical thinking skills, as opposed to skills acquisition, I think is brilliant and a fantastic way to democratize access. And they've been having nothing but success so far. So I'm excited about Andela.
I do think that the irony is that, of course, it's become this is a line I think I saw in a press release or something, that apparently it's becoming harder to get into Andela than it is to get into Harvard.
But I mean, is that to say that they're not decreasing their cohorts? What's happening is more and more people on the continent are finding out about Andela, that it's just showing all of the demand, the unmet demand for higher education and more structured education from Africans at large.
Yeah, I don't think it's an indictment on them in any way. I do think, though, it points to what you're saying. Perhaps you're absolutely right to be bullish on tech and education and how big the market is, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you have 1 billion people, 70% of whom are under the age of 35, and you have a current. I mean, I'm working with so there's Obina Ukwani in Enugu is starting Makers Academy, and just to see the way that people are thinking about and creating solutions for this massive demographic of young people who are hungry for education and who are hungry for knowledge that they don't yet have access to.
Right. So, I believe you organize panels for South by Southwest. Is that right?
Yes.
And look, I spoke to someone who went this year and came back raving. Should I go next year? Should I plan to go? What's the importance? What would be the benefit and the importance of repping Africa at a place like that for someone like me? Sell me.
Yeah, it's just I think places where there are a lot of concentration of movers and shakers, the people who, if inspired by your idea, can immediately act, whether that be financing you or promoting you widely, or building something in your direction. I always like to spend time in those spaces, and South by Southwest is a great. I mean, everyone is there, and they're all generally. I mean, it started as a creative conference or something more similar to Art Basel, but now it's got its own innovation and entrepreneurship twist on things. So it's a really interesting space for people who have open minds, are excited about new things and are also focused and pursuing the innovation and entrepreneurship space.
Yeah, and so you organize a panel called "Why Will You Invest in Sub-Saharan Africa?" So what's the response been
since then? I mean, we're looking at, so even, well, to that panel, people were excited. Yeah. But in general, why you will invest in Sub-Saharan Africa. I mean, if you just Google Sub-Saharan Africa and look at look at the news this year compared to even 2 years ago, 3 years ago, if you Google Nigeria, if you Google Kenya, the perception in the media is even shifting. And you have Andreessen Horowitz just making their Africa fintech investment into Branch. That's a consumer loan company focused on East Africa exclusively. And Andreessen Horowitz just invested. You have Y Combinator. You have 500 startups. You have Techstars. They just opened an office in an accelerator in South Africa. All of these accepting more and more Africans into their cohorts. I was just on the phone with Michael Siebel. He's a partner at Y Combinator a few days ago, and we were brainstorming on ways in which he can market to and appeal to more Africans for their cohorts. People are realizing the untapped potential, the incredible opportunity. I believe it was an Ernst & Young innovation study from several years ago. It was talking about private equity on the continent, 34.7% annualized ROI for the late stage private equity opportunities. So when you enter the market and when you're looking at deals, when you're pursuing deals, there's a lot of money to be made, and people who are outside of that space have lower perceptions or less understanding. But when you actually enter the market and you realize not only is there equal opportunity, people are building the same sort of tech, catering to the same sort of markets, but also the valuations are lower simply because there's less capital to work. So you can get more bang for your buck. You can make more money. You can have higher equity stakes. You can have more impact and more influence as people who are creating companies on the continent in general are not just, of course, even if they're exclusively focused on for-profit ventures, they're inherently creating impact and inherently doing good for their local market. So there are a lot of appeals. It's one, you can make the same amount of money, if not more. Two, it's cheaper to invest in Africa-based businesses than elsewhere because of less competitive capital. And three, you could invest in the Twitter for cats. You could invest in a silly solution that maybe scales globally and maybe will be hugely monetizable, or you could invest in an Africa-based business where you're not only making money, but you're changing the continent. You're literally pioneering a space, and that's sexy and that's exciting. That's appealing to venture capitalists and the angels that we're working with.
And so what misconceptions do you find persist despite this shift in perception?
Yeah. So with the tours, I mean, like with the last one that we did, we had, before some of the travelers came, I received emails saying, are we going to have, armed guards? Will we have bulletproof vehicles? Cause, Boko Haram is taking over Nigeria. And I said, okay, well, yeah, I'm happy to accommodate whatever way you need. And, just come and you'll find out when you get there. And people were, oh my gosh, should I come? I just saw this article talking about Buhari and he did an interview and everything's corrupt, blah, blah. And then they come. And by day 2, people are taking Ubers by themselves to hang out with people they met in Lagos in the 2 days that they've been there. And so it's just, it's very telling. It's just one of those things. Come, see, you have all of your perceptions. I promise you, they are wrong in whatever they may be. If you've never been to the continent, come. See it once, you like it, you stay, you engage with business, you don't, you go. And it's one thing to say, every single one of the people from our last tour who came, who saw opportunities, have either invested, started businesses, or started partnerships with people that they met in Nigeria. And that in and of itself is telling. As far as the other, I'm not even going to get into all of the ridiculousness. What's just so interesting is Nigeria had, with this Buhari election, it was totally peaceful. It was a totally fair, transition of power. Guess who didn't cover it? I never saw, I don't even think people in San Francisco even knew about that unless they're researching politics in West Africa. That was not even covered. So it's something I wish that West African politics and governments would spend a little bit more money on PR and good PR internationally, because it seems that people no money is going into telling the right story. There's a lot of good things happening. I'm not the one hearing about them. So, if I were to only be looking in the news. So I just wish
can't trust commercial news. Commercial news interests to sell a story that's not going to help ratings.
Exactly. Just the ridiculousness that's covered. Yet Boko Haram is a problem. It's a problem in an isolated part of Nigeria. That's like saying, don't go to San Francisco because Detroit. Don't go to San Francisco
Orlando.
Because exactly, because Orlando. And especially those are the type of investors we're not really appealing to, the ones who are more worldly in their perspective, already initiating these conversations independently. Those are the ones that we are talking to.
So how would, that's my next question, great segue into how does someone get a spot on that tour? How does someone interested in the people you are rounding up to bring over make sure that you swing around their neighborhood, that kind of thing?
Mm-hmm. So how do we get people excited and engaged, and how do we select who is invited and who is not?
Yes, and where you decide to go. For example, I haven't heard much about South Africa. And
where do we decide to go?
And granted, relative to other parts of the continent, there's a lot more going on in South Africa, a lot more hype, that might get you going elsewhere. But like, how do you decide where to go?
Okay. Yeah. We're not avoid. That was a strong word. We have not yet, pursued South Africa because we are strengthening the tours in what Ingressive has perceived as the two largest technology and startup ecosystems. And that's by measure of.
You're going to get a lot of people going, what'd she say?
Okay.
And is that Nigeria? Is that Nigeria and Kenya? Is that what you mean?
Yeah. And by, so there is South Africa. So not this coming tour, but the one after that will be based in, we'll start in Cape Town. So just to, appease all of those,
no,
Southern African people.
Touchy, to be honest. I'm just
but if you're looking at things like, where's the foreign direct investment going into in the continent? Where have the largest tech companies originated? Where are they from? Where's Jumia, Konga, InterSwitch,
the biggest gains,
Iroko,
the biggest bang for money, bang for buck, per dollar put in.
Exactly. And it's cheap. It's still cheaper to invest in Nigeria and Kenya than South Africa. If you're looking at FX, if you're looking at foreign exchange, if you're even looking at the capital in the local markets. So those are a couple of reasons. That's what we look for. And we also look for places where tech companies have already established. So we know that there's just somebody else and there are other institutions promoting that free flow of information. Where does Google operate on the continent? Where does Facebook have an office? Where's IBM? Where's Microsoft? And that's why we're looking why we're looking at Lagos and Nairobi. And so, and to that answer part of the question. The other part, who are we inviting and why are we inviting them? We're inviting successful technology founders who have built and scaled their own companies before, so that they can come and serve as mentors and advisors, so that they can come work with other investors, teaching them, serve as venture partners with local investors, and they can come with checks in hand, ready to invest. This is not a travel and exploration safari, blah, blah, blah. This is people coming because they have capital that they want to diversify into sub-Saharan markets, and they're looking to mentor, advise, and invest in African entrepreneurs.
Right. Look, it's pretty much downhill from here. I think we've spoken about a lot of useful things. I'm just curious, given you have an experience that I will never experience, no matter how hard I try or where I go or what I try and change about myself, I'll never be a woman. When was the last time you were so, your being a woman was so painfully part of either a negative or a positive experience?
It has to be painfully. My being a woman is here every day.
No, what I mean is, I'm not talking about your being a woman. I'm talking about
in business. Yeah.
a sort of environmental issue that sort of made it painfully obvious that you are a woman for whatever,
Yes.
for either positive, for either
Okay.
good or bad.
Okay. So of course, I mean, I don't really know a lot of other women in the international finance space of the early stage VC focus on Africa space. I know a couple, I know a few other ones. I don't know a lot. So already there's the minority factor there. And then also I'm younger, with respect to, the age range going from 60 to 25. And so there initially was, there initially were problems with that, being dismissed simply or having to bring, hiring a male to just sit in the room and pretend like he was the boss and I was doing all the talking.
No way. Seriously?
Yeah. I mean, you have to deal with biases. You have to deal with, if I want to get the deal done, there are certain things that I'm like, in coming this far. Now, the one thing is what I've seriously learned is I have two solutions. And then I'll go back to that. But my one solution in any sort of stress and drama around being a female in business or being a young person in business is one, always only work through warm introductions. Always make sure you're only meeting with and dealing with people who have been referred or who you've been referred to by legit people. Like, one of my mentors is, the head of Deutsche Bank or the head of Africa for Deutsche Bank, Adiola Aziz. And she has been a phenomenal supporter and tremendous and just open. She has been so helpful from the very beginning in referrals, in just, kind of being the point person, for the company in West Africa and Nigeria. So working through recommendations only. And the second one is, let the numbers speak for themselves. Now we have people who have come to the continent. We have people who have come to Nigeria. We have investments that Ingressive has facilitated, is responsible for, has syndicated into the market. And so now if you don't want to work with us, then it's not that we're not doing something right. It's that you have your own biases. And if you have your own biases, you probably are missing other deals too. And I probably don't want to work with you anyway. So yeah, there are things now that I will not put up with because we don't have to, because there are enough people who can just look at numbers and say, hey, that's a good deal. The rest of them, they'll probably get weeded out anyway. But in the beginning, yeah, there are only so many battles that you can pick. There are only so many fights that I want to pick. Do I want to pick the battle of being the first woman in my space and having everyone know that my face is the head of the company and that I'm doing all the work? Or do I want to promote the mission? There's a big mission that we're building, and that's to redirect capital to sub-Saharan Africa. And those are two, I could do them both at the same time, but then my life would be all the more challenging. Why don't I just focus on one and get there however I can? And then when I'm, at the end saying, hey, we did it this whole time. So that's, these are challenges that I'm considering dealing with. But yes, I did funny story. I did bring a male into some of my, if you're meeting with, 60-year-old, Nigerian men at different banks when we were creating our initial partnerships. I mean, for me to walk in with an American accent as a young person, it just creates all the more credibility to have, at least initially, like pre-traction, to have somebody with a few gray hairs and a more familiar face. And so, yeah, you just, figure it out. But no, I would say no. Now it's not a problem. Of course, everyone has their own assets and their own resources and their own, ways of getting, ways of navigating the world, and everything can have a positive twist. Before, so where I was like, why am I not 60 and male? I'm never going to be that. So I have resources that, and a distinct, a distinct position in the market that 60-year-old men don't. And so
and a worldview.
And a worldview. Exactly. And so it's really become an advantage. This being on both coasts and being exactly who I am is now becoming an advantage.
Have you ever? Are there certain recurring questions or questions that occur simply because you're a woman in this position?
Yeah,
like even from the point of view of, say, someone like me interviewing you for a podcast or
and asking me what about being a woman?
Asking you, is that a common question? Is that
everyone
an annoyingly
wants to hear
common question?
The juicy bad stories of something that happened, and has it? I'm getting that in interviews. I get that a lot. So tell me a situation where blah blah blah. No, what? My life is
how
just
have
like
they
everyone
broken
else.
you?
But what?
How have they broken your spirit?
But no, in general, I mean, something funny that now I just laugh at. It really bothered me before, but I'm speaking on panels. I'm traveling. I was just at Afrobites in Paris. I was just at the Chatham House London conference in London. I was just, Art Basel in Switzerland, and then just last week at GES Global Entrepreneurship Summit here in Silicon Valley. And something, if I speak on a panel and then I come down, and I don't really do a lot of, specifically, this is Maya on behalf of Ingressive. If I let it kind of just generally be there, people will come up to me, or even if I do address myself as the founder of Ingressive, people will come up and say, "Oh, how long have you been at that company? Oh, do you work with the founder? Like what is your role? Like, who are you? Do you?" And I've even gotten, "Oh, are you the secretary? Could we schedule?" I'm like, "Oh, yeah. Or do you know the founder?" Yeah, I know the founder pretty well. I know who the founder is. And I mean, now it's just funny. Now it's just biases, and you have to work around them. And whatever.
That is awful. That is absolutely awful.
Yeah,
Look, I mean,
it's annoying, but whatever.
I mean, and the thing is, I suppose, everyone has a good moan once in a while about being a person of color and that kind of thing. But yeah, what impresses me, and really my questions come from a point of not that I expect any less of women or anything, but just how much harder it is for a woman and a woman of color to sort of just, how much harder you probably have to work at coming across just as sort of, as calm and as relaxed as some dude might, without even thinking,
Well,
so how much, I don't know, like it kind of feels, look, I mean, I speak from the point of view of someone whose mother did her first degree in her 50s, for example. And I remember her asking me at the time, my father was finishing his PhD, and she asking me at her graduation, do you think I could do what daddy did, with his PhD? And I was in the third grade at the time, and I thought, I was in grade school at the time, and I thought, no, I just seen my dad struggle through his PhD, and I never thought that was something I wanted for my mother to go through. And at the time I said no. And I reminded her about that when she graduated with her PhD many years later. I said, Mom, like, how clueless was I to even think I could make I could even tell you what's possible.
And also,
and what
you
isn't.
didn't, and you just defined the difference. It wasn't that you thought your mom wasn't competent enough to be able to complete it. You just wanted to protect her, and that's a different, that itself is something. Thankfully, fortunately, I am blessed on both sides with parents. I mean, one, they kind of just gave up trying to direct me from age 12 because I kind of have been doing what I want for a pretty young age. My dad would be rolling his eyes right now. But
I tried to make her a doctor.
But
no.
My siblings are taking that over. It's okay. My sister's going into medicine, and my other sister.
No, and you're doing great. You don't even have to sort of say you're not a sloppy seconds by any chance. I think I'm sure they're really proud of you.
Yes. The only thing is now, so
what, your master's is what you were going to like? Because that my dad is he's just praying for me to finish my master's.
Yes.
That'd be nice. And then my PhD, and then of course a second maybe.
Yeah. I've fortunately had parents who wholly support me in all that I'm doing, and never, even from the beginning, there was no, you do this, you're a girl, you do this, you're a boy. It's pursue whatever you want, you know. I mean, as long as it's going to make money and help people and you know, promote there are values under what business you're creating. I was never, you know, reprimanded for going in a different direction. The only thing that they would ever look down upon is if I was doing something simply that either hurt the environment or hurt other people or wasn't with consideration of the values that they instilled in me. So they've been 100% supportive of everything, and that I think I have a lot to cred them for in my ability to get so far.
Yeah, I don't see the creation of nuclear warheads in your future anytime soon. So they should be quite happy.
You never know. You never know.
I don't imagine you're going that direction. Okay, so we're winding down now. A popular song of 2016, 2015, or 2015, that no further back, that adequately describes the world you currently inhabit, your life in general. That would pretty much sum that all up. What does your life look like? Play the track and I'll get a pretty picture. What song would that be?
Why did we always have to do music? Can I just sing, like, give you a poem or...
Are you so disposed? Are you into like performance poetry and that kind of thing, or
you know what?
What are you into?
Adonai, Hallelujah. I love that song.
So you enjoy worship music? Do you enjoy worship music?
I appreciate creativity in all of the forms it is realized, particularly when it is done well. Very, very, very well. And that song's done well. So yeah, right now.
Who's the artist again?
Good question.
Well, look, we'll find it. Don't worry.
Sarkodie.
Oh, okay. Shout out.
I
Shout
heard,
out
so I was at the Harvard Africa Business Conference and seeing some of those performers in the flesh was very exciting. It was very, yes. Yeah. So I'd say that set a good theme, a good starter to my 2016.
So what is it about that song that adequately describes, you know, the world you inhabit right now? Is it the creativity like you've mentioned? Is it, what is it?
It's the creativity. It's the transferability. People from anywhere can see that opportunity or can see that track and be like, wow, that's a well-made song. And also just the appreciation and the devotion. I don't want to say my family is extremely religious, but my family is spiritual and value driven. And I always appreciate hearing some of those values reflected in the music that I listen to.
Fantastic. So, what are you listening to? What's on your, do people still have iPods? What are you streaming?
Of course, you know, the Lemonade video. I had to get on Tidal for that. But in general, what I'm listening to.
So you're one of the people who fell for that very well orchestrated. Well, I have to have a slow clap to them for getting everyone on Tidal just for that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And Kanye's new album. I'm also listening to. I have WizKid. As my recently played tracks, I have Ruby. Do you know she's from Nigeria? I have Ruby.
I'm not familiar with Ruby. I know
Toomey and WizKid as the last three.
Toomey as in Toomey formerly of the Volume, the South African rapper.
South African. Mm-hmm.
Have you heard him? In a slam poetry setup?
Nah, but I will be Googling that as soon as we get off.
He is wicked. Like, if you get a chance to go see him live, because he's an anthropologist, and you've got some Vastis that actually study his work. He's phenomenal. Mm-hmm. I've seen him. Yeah, he mentioned as a slam poet. I've seen him perform with a band, and obviously as an MC and that kind of thing. But he's quite something as a poet, as a slam poet and that kind of thing. If he's out your way, you need to go see him.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Okay.
I'll leave that.
So a tip for nothing. For nothing. A tip for nothing.
Thank
And
you for
so
that tip.
finally, a question I didn't ask you that you wish I had.
What do I do for creative expression? What do I do in my side time? What are some of my favorite activities?
Well, I could tell you that you're a dancer, and I'm kidding.
Yeah. Okay. That's the
I will
start of it. That's the start
I
of
will
it.
humor you. I will humor you. So what is it you do, Maya, in your spare time? As extracurricular activities.
Yes. In the US, I like to ride my motorcycle. I'm hoping to
You
get
ride
into
bikes?
racing. Yes, I ride bikes. I have a CBR 250. It's a little one. It's my starter bike, but I'm starting to explore some of the later stage and racer series. I like to travel. I'm big on just getting a ticket, jumping, for a conference, for an event, for a meeting, for anything, for just exploration. I really like traveling, going new places. I dance. I've been dancing for 15 years, and as soon as I get back from my 3 months in Lagos, for my 3 months in San Francisco, I'll be teaching here in San Francisco hip hop class. So hit me up for details on that if you want to come and learn.
Wow.
And I'm a fan of karaoke.
Really? Now
I'm a
here's
fan of
something.
singing. I don't know, when it's done well, and I get to
yeah.
choose the tracks, and I know everyone in the room. Then
But
I'm a fan of
karaoke's never
karaoke.
done
Otherwise,
well.
yeah. Okay. So I enjoy playing music at my house with my friends, and one person is singing out loud.
Oh, I see. I see. Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's a word for everything you've just described. Eclectic.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah, that's a lot of the things in the list you just are quite unexpected, which is great. Your parents must hate that you love bikes.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, my dad, so I was like, Dad, I'm thinking of getting a motorcycle next time I come to Nigeria. And he's like, don't even, no. Maya.
Don't even think about it.
Yeah. Telling me, yeah, he's like, I give you half a day. I give you half a day. And I was like, no, but what if I just wore really bright gear? He's like, Maya, people would literally pick you out, run you down. Yeah. So
like, get
unfortunately,
her.
Unfortunately, my dad will not let me import a motorcycle to Nigeria, despite the fact that it would save us a lot of time in traffic. But yeah, I'm sticking to the States for that one.
And what's your go-to karaoke song?
I
know I said
Elusive.
I'm supposed to stop these questions, but I think you opened the door here.
Elusive by Leon LaHavas.
Elusive by Leon LaHavas. I'm going to look out for that. Is that a Spanish artist or?
No, she's very much brown and American looking. American, maybe, but she's brown. I think she's like African American mixed of some sort.
Okay. Fantastic. Well, Elusive. I'm going to check.
Leon LaHavas. Yeah, do it. Cool. I look forward to the positive reviews.
Well, a very fancy name. It's, a very, okay. And I just found, no, because there's a screenshot of the video and she's got like this Egyptian inspired makeup on her face. So I'm like, okay.
Yeah, I think she just wears a lot of eyeliner. To be honest, I don't think it's Egyptian inspired. I think she just is heavy on the eyeliner, but looks good. She's cute. So yeah.
Well,
okay.
I'm going to give her a listen, but otherwise I have to thank you so much for your time and for sharing it with me and all the listeners of our show. All the best with all the work you do. Here's to hoping you're in our neck of the woods sooner rather than later. And Cape Town doesn't count as far as us Joe Burgers are concerned. I would expect you to travel up north before we count it as a visit to the nation.
Okay. You know, I had a very wonderful New Year's in Cape Town 2 New Year's ago, and I spent a lot of time at Caprice, and
did you?
and I met a lot of very wonderful people. So
So
I'll be in Joburg
I
before
studied
the
in
end of the
Cape
year.
Town, so it does have a warm place in my heart. But I'm definitely a Joburger. I think the vibe once you become a Joburger,
A
is kind of like
Joburger.
how New York is. No, this is. I mean, it's like
Okay.
it's like don't mess with New Yorkers. You know what I mean? That kind of vibe.
Yeah.
It's
Okay,
a similar vibe, and that's saying a lot given I'm Zimbabwean, and don't get it twisted. I love my country. So,
Okay.
but Joburg is something else. So we look forward to having you visit sometime.
Absolutely. I look forward to it. And I'll be there for the GEC coming in March of 2016. So, I'll see you.
You mean
I'll see you
27? You
soon.
mean March
Or
2017?
2017. March 2017. Yes, excuse
Then
me.
you'd have to go back in time, and that would be awkward.
That'd be
you'd have to develop the
complicated.
tech
I don't know
first.
if
Well,
All
thank
right,
you so
all right.
much for this chat.
Yes,
I really
thank
do
you.
appreciate it. And,
Thank you for listening to African Tech Conversations.
Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.